Welcome to the Digital Flight Podcast, your flight plan to the evolving digital economy. How do digital trends impact you, your organization, and your industry? Deep dive into these questions with Dr. Brian Lambert as he helps you avoid the turbulence and explore the highs and lows of transformation, innovation, and execution.
Real quick, one quick favor to ask from you. There's one simple way that you can support our show, and that is by hitting that follow-up button on this app you're listening to this show on right now. The only free thing I'll ask from you is that you hit the follow or like button on this app. That helps us more than I could articulate, and it really allows us to keep doing what we're doing here. I really appreciate it.
Digital Flight 71, runway transformation right, cleared for takeoff, dynamic 220.
Cabin is secure for departure.
Fasten your seatbelts. The Digital Flight Podcast takes off now.
Hello, digital pilots. Today we're going on an amazing trip through time to find out how the jet engine came to be. It's a technological advance that had changed the sky. Don't forget to buckle up because we're going to look at the lives and memories of two pioneers, Frank Whittle and Hans von Ohain. Their paths led to the start of the jet age. It was the late 1920s in the middle of England, and a young RAF officer named Frank Whittle had an idea that would change the very nature of aviation. Whittle was both a scholar and a thinker who wasn't happy with the limits of the propeller-driven airplanes that were available at the time. Because of his studies and deep knowledge of how gases move, he came up with a completely new and bold idea, a gas turbine engine that could take planes to speeds and heights that had never been seen before. His original work on jet propulsion was based on a deep understanding of thermodynamics and the dynamics of gases, as well as scientific knowledge and a clear vision for the future. While piston engines were getting close to their peak performance, Whittle saw that gas turbines had a lot of unused promise to make them go faster and with more thrust. His imagination went up to the sky, where he saw planes flying at speeds and heights that had never been possible before. He saw places where the thin air slowed down piston engines, and that air could be used to test how well jet engines work. Whittle had a technical understanding of how gas turbine engines work, which meant they didn't need standard blades because they could make powerful jets of exhaust. This was an essential idea to the development of the turbojet engine. Whittle also knew the big problems that came up when propellers were used at high speeds, especially when the tips of the propellers got close to sonic speed. This made him even more determined to find a jet-based solution. At the same time, in Germany, across the water, there was another brilliant mind at work. Physicist and engineer Hans von Ohain also worked toward a goal very similar to Whittle's. Because he was interested in new things and he saw flaws in propeller-driven flight, von Ohain set his sights on a revolutionary idea: make a turbojet engine that would take planes to new heights and speeds as well. He used a complex mix of scientific knowledge and new ideas to get where he is now in jet power. Knowing a lot about fluid dynamics and thermodynamics, von Ohain saw that gas turbines were much better than the piston engines. In his dreams, he imagined a time when planes could fly above thick layers of the lower atmosphere, where piston engines had trouble. Because he was so knowledgeable, he came up with a way to use exhaust gases directly from motion, so there would be no need for bulky blades. This finding was significant in making the turbojet possible. Von Ohain was aware of the problems and inefficiencies of high-speed propeller flight, and that's what led him to focus on jet propulsion. Von Ohain worked on his version of the turbojet engine behind closed doors with the help of Ernst Hinkel, an airplane maker. His work paid off on August 27, 1939, when the Hinkel HE-178 became the first plane to fly with jet propulsion, right around World War II.
Captain, this is F.O. Taylor. Please clarify what that has to do with digital transformation on our in-flight checklist. Over.
That's a great question, First Officer Taylor. Allow me to explain. Was it crazy accident, or was it the result of things going on around both of these men that pushed these gentlemen to make their important discoveries? Whittle was driven to go beyond limits of technology of the time by his intellectual curiosity and his strong desire to do. He thought of a new way, and instead of using piston engines, he used gases. Eventually, he made the world's first useful turbojet engine, and in the end, this achievement would power the Gloucester Meteor, which was the Allies' first effective jet fighter. Von Ohain's story was similar, but it took place in a country getting ready for war. Because of copyright security and the growing threat of international conflict, von Ohain didn't know about Whittle's work. His invention was also based on a desire for speed and efficiency. The successful test flight of the Hinkle HE-178 was a major event in the history of aviation. It showed how jet power could change the way aircraft are used for both transportation and warfare. Together, their work paved the way for the jet age. Their stories teach us about the power of having a goal and how important it is to keep going, and how new ideas can change the future. So you might be interested in knowing why was the German jet often thought of as the first jet fighter? Whittle had made the first engine that could move, and his work laid the technical groundwork for jet power, but von Ohain's work really came to the fore when it was used in real life. Successful flights of the Hinkle HE-178 and the Messerschmitt Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter, actually showed people how technology could be used. People had to see it, and the German was the first to actually show it in production so others could see. When we think about the lives of these two pioneers, we are reminded how creative people can be and how hard they work to make progress. The engines that Whittle and von Ohain made are remembered not only in the metal that they created, but also in the minds of pioneers who are brave enough to dream what the future might hold.
Digital Flight 71, Transformation Tower. We are charting a course through the digital transformation environment. Your guidance is needed to avoid pitfalls and seize opportunities. Respond, over.
Roger that, Transformation Tower. We'll explore the forces of digital transformation in order to reach our final destination safely. Over. The journey of these first flight pioneers, which was driven by big ideas, smart investments, and a strong will to keep going, can serve as an example for companies and organizations starting out on their transformative path of digital evolution and AI. We're going to go down and we're going to think about the brave heights that were reached by pioneers like Whittle and von Ohain. And to think about the complicated world of jet engines, it's just like the complicated world of digital transformation, where the principles of innovation show organizations how to get there. The jet engine changed the way airplanes flew, and the digital shift that we have to pioneer now is going to change the way businesses and technologies work.
Passengers, today we're navigating the world of data and information. Brace for some in-depth learning. Don't forget, hit subscribe for more insights. Thank you.
As we make our way through this change, let's think about the history of jet propulsion and the way it's similar to the challenges and opportunities that organizations face when they start investing in digital technology. The same sense of innovation that comes from having a big picture, making smart investments, and never giving up really guides people through the digital age. Sometimes it has to be done in secret, and sometimes it's out there for the whole entire world to see. Either way, in this world of digital transformation, leaders need to be able to see how their organizations will grow and change in the future. This idea of a future vision is critical. It's about finding chances for new ideas that can take businesses to higher levels, just like the jet engine did for flying. These ideas could be automation, data analytics, tools, new software, something that engages customers differently. And having that idea is one thing, but putting action behind it is another. Whether it's in a test environment like Whittle or actually showing it to others like von Ohain, the idea of translating that idea into something tangible, it's almost a lost art. But in the world of digital transformation, we have to do that. So in that way, strategic investment is very important on this journey, not only financially, but the strategic investment of time and ideation and innovation. It takes careful planning, long-term thinking, and the right use of resources to build that jet engine. The same way, organizations today need to make smart investments in digital tech that will fit their main goals and their plans for the future. Or should I say, their plans for the future. It's not enough to just use technology. You need to put money into systems and solutions that bring real value and long-term growth. More importantly, people need to see and actually experience how the transformation will impact them. Whether it's a big idea that's more strategic or something that's more tactical where they can actually get in and experience it and test drive it and use it, bringing that idea to life is critical. And this path from ideation to actual tangible output and making things work, it's not easy. The path and the flight has rough spots. There are unforeseen circumstances. The weather could be rough. And that same kind of persistence that our aircraft pioneers had is something that you'll need as well in the world of digital change. There will be problems for organizations like setbacks in technology, internal friction, unclear market conditions, conflicting priorities. But success in the digital world comes from sticking to the vision and always changing with the times. Let's look at the history of the jet engine again to think about the balance that's needed to make digital investments and to make them work and come to life. Harmonizing the push of innovation with the pull of constraints is key to making sure that digital change lifts the company without putting too much stress on it. The goal is to reach new levels of efficiency, engagement, and success by going forward with purpose and following the rules of creativity. The guiding stars for traveling the skies are the principles of visionary thinking, strategic investment, and relentless perseverance, which are also useful for guiding organizations through the vast and occasionally rough digital world. Let's look at how these rules can be used to make that digital test work and actually create something that people want to fly. We're going to talk about visionary thinking. To lead a successful digital change, you have to create an environment that values imagination and thinking ahead. So many people are involved in the day-to-day that it's really valuable to spend some time and to actually cast a vision. The things that you can do to cast that vision and have people embrace it is encourage them. Encourage people in your organization to be curious and keep learning. Hold regular brainstorming meetings where people from different areas share their thoughts and ideas on new technologies. Making a digital flight plan that fits with your long-term business goals is also important. This plan should not only include updates and refreshes to technology, but also new ways of doing business and providing services that digital technologies can make possible. The next big bucket that you can focus on as a digital pioneer is to think about strategic investment. For the best return on investment and long-term progress, it's important to invest carefully in digital transformation. To do that well, you need to take a close look at how digitally mature your business is now and also figure out where the digital spending can bring you the most value. Try out small projects and tests before you put them into action on a large scale. This lets you try out new tools and ways of doing things, which lowers the risks and helps you learn important lessons before you allocate a lot of other resources. To do that, you're going to need relationships with other groups in the organization, in the business, even in IT. Working together can help you figure out the best ways to do things and save you money on the costs of making mistakes. The final thing to consider on this is understanding the financial impact of what you're doing. As a steward of resources, it's really important to explain to leaders and even the finance organization what types of impact you're seeing as you do these tests. Finally, relentless perseverance. You've got to have the grit necessary to get through the problems that will inevitably rise with digital transformation. To make people more resilient and follow you, think about making it enjoyable to get the small wins, the little wins. So often we want the big win and the final rollout and the final implementation, but really it's the small wins that help you take flight. Learn from your little failures and then give the team a boost to help them keep going and reward them and praise them for even the smallest thing. You almost have to redefine what good looks like, to think about good not as in done and actually landing the plane, but in making progress towards flying the plane. Making progress is something to celebrate. Also, make sure your organization has a support system with digital champions. Help people understand the changes that you're driving. Let them be advocates and help them help you in order to actually land the transformation or even the small project. Having that sense of community is really critical. You're also going to have to learn to change direction. Being a digital pioneer, filing your flight plan, it's a three-dimensional space. It's not two-dimensional. That's why airplanes have to be able to navigate based on three dimensions. The digital world is always changing, and you have to be quick to respond with new tools, market reaction, new ideas, and having a point of view. You know that technology moves fast, and thinking about it and assembling that listening and that ear to the ground is critical. Finally, when you make choices about digital investments and you're using that visionary thinking and you've got that community and they're activating it, realize that you're changing how your organization works. Whether it's cloud computing, data analytics, cybersecurity, all of these things require understanding the current state, but also a forward-leaning approach to see the future, which means talking about and really leading with flexibility, scalability, innovation, understanding the business impact, being data-driven, and being able to understand what data is available. When it comes to data analytics, being creative and thinking about patterns and asking other people what they see. With cloud computing, being able to scale and help people see how things work in test environments and actually having them deploy it is critical if in a software environment, if that's the innovation that you have. And then in cybersecurity, digital assets are becoming even more valuable in the digital age. These are intangible assets like intellectual property and documents that have bits and pieces of information. But with AI has the ability to synthesize all of that behind your firewall. So you've got to keep the business honest, and you have to be able to protect against threats in order to improve your customers' trust. As a visionary, understand how AI is a key factor and how it is going to drive your competitiveness in the future. AI will not only automate routine jobs, but it will also help you make better decisions. When you think about making smart investments in AI, That could mean picking projects with clear business cases, focusing on areas with a high ROI potential, like automating customer service, chat bots, etc., or making sure that AI is used in an ethical way. Keeping investments in AI clear and setting aside those AI pilot projects is also critical. You can learn a lot from pilot projects all the time. Changing how those strategies fit your organization, from the needs analysis to ethical concerns to the process impacts, all of these are critical for successfully taking flight. So putting these suggestions into action requires a mix of creativity, strategic foresight, perseverance. Organizations that get through these challenges of digital change, they become more flexible and they become more effective and competitive. And that is what digital leadership is all about. Remember that the path to the digital change is like the path of invention of the jet engine. It shows how creative and determined people can be. Take a cue from these early pioneers of technology and use the lessons that they share with us. I pulled together a case study, an example of using visionary thinking, strategic investment, and relentless perseverance to help an organization. I'm going to call this organization Green Tech. And Green Tech is a company that works with renewable energy to create long-lasting options for cities all over the world. This is a fictitious company, but it's compiled through my past experiences and my understanding of digital initiatives to create really a composite organization that puts these things into action. And I hope you enjoy learning about these digital pilots at Green Tech. What they did was they saw early on that combining technology with green energy can make solutions that are more effective, flexible, and easy to use. The business imagined a future where energy systems are not only green, but also smart and able to distribute energy in the best way possible. How cool is that? To be able to do that, they had to think about digital platforms that used AI and Internet of Things to track and control how much energy homes and companies use. They had devices on refrigerators. They had devices on boxes that would actually tell you how much the spa was running, or the refrigerator, or even the microwave. It could tell by the intake of energy from the actual electrical supply what devices were using what. The platform actually learned from users' habits. And what it did was it learned how to allocate energy more efficiently. Green Tech made strategic investments to bring that digital platform to life. And they worked on little projects to achieve the broader scope of their goal. They started with small cross-functional teams whose only job was to look at their idea and even see if it was even possible. After some early wins, they increased funding and teamed up with the AI and the IoT tech companies in their network and partnered with them to spend money and train their employees on how to use the platform and tools. This made sure that their team was ready for the future that they were creating. Finally, perseverance. They showed a lot of perseverance, this company that I'm thinking about. There are some tough parts on their trip. Early versions of their platform had technical problems. It took a lot longer than expected for standard energy companies to even start using it. But Green Tech kept going and it kept educating. It kept selling the vision. It improved its technology based on comments. It helped bring together partners to show the long-term benefits. Their hard work paid off when a big city used their platform for a test project in a new sustainable living area of town. This cut down on energy waste by a lot, and it gave them a plan on how to grow for the future. The result of this fictitious company was to actually think about and understand how investments in their organization impacted constituents, impacted taxpayers. Like many businesses that are going through digital change, they had to figure out how they could actually drive a benefit to their customer's customer, if you will. To do that, they had to think about, really, how do you measure the intangible benefit, the intangible value of energy? Their digital platform was meant to make energy more efficient and environmentally friendly. How do you sell that? Because that's intangible. It's not like selling a bottle of water. You can't put your head around and actually pick up environmentally friendly. To figure out how much these benefits are worth, they had to figure out tools and methods that could measure and then quantify this value. They also had to think about the long-term ROI for the city and create and launch the digital platform with high upfront costs, but then over time, through relationships, training, and ongoing usage, be able to decrease the cost over time. And because of this, they were able to grow and scale, which meant more data, more complexity, more data complexity, more volume. That meant they had to gather a lot more data on how people used energy. They had to get useful information and then provide that to the city so that the city can not only make energy decisions, but also they could turn it into a bit of a service. They could provide helpful tips and advice for people about how to manage their energy consumption. There were a lot of things to think about: adoption, changes in behavior, rolling out the platform. It's more than just technical. Does it work? You have to have the people actually use it. And that means some sort of behavior change, if you will. So in this case, in this example, Green Tech innovated, and they had both quantitative and qualitative methods. They could actually use quotes from customers. They had pictures that showed their devices in use. They had people explaining what they couldn't understand before and how the company helped them understand it now. And that actually drove a lot of change in the green energy sector. What a great story. And as a digital pilot, how would you actually participate and effectively apply those components like Green Tech did? Visionary thinking, strategic investment, perseverance, and being data-driven, and having that understanding of the difference between an intangible value and something that's tangible. First, they've got to learn. And that's my advice to you. Keep learning, keep going with your learning, keep learning new tools, understand the trends in your field, but more importantly, understand the trends in your customers' sectors. You can join professional networks. You can do searches on LinkedIn. You can understand what trends are happening and what people are talking about. Secondly, to pull this off, you really need a culture that celebrates new ideas. So many times people have an idea, and in the rush and the busyness of getting things done, it's very easy to squash those ideas. The team needs to be able to share and try new things without worrying about failing. Figure out creative ways to help your company reach its goals by celebrating those incremental improvements. Think about the strategic investments that you need to make on digital maturity, the investments not only in the hardware or in the cloud, but in your people and the skills that they have. Being digitally literate, having that literacy and that digital maturity is critical as somebody in the digital age. Make a plan for your company's digital skills and find places where people can improve that. Help build a bridge between the IT organization and the business. Form partnerships that work together. Set clear goals for those partnerships. Ask partners what they're seeing, who they're working with, what examples of challenges they're coming up with and actually solving with those customers. And all of these things build up your team's resilience, the ability to change, to adapt, to learn on the go, to try new things. All of that is not about managing risk. It's about managing innovation. So many times we say we have innovative organizations, but really we don't support that innovation because we're trying to manage the risk. And that's the big trade-off as a digital pioneer, the ability to manage the risk between trying something new and having everybody see it fail. So that means in both those cases, whether you're managing the risk or you're selling the vision, you've got to be a good communicator. Everybody has a stake in digital projects, the goals, the strategies, the progress. Having clear conversations about what's happening is really important. And of course, make sure your leadership doesn't have any surprises, especially the bad surprises. Sometimes good surprises are great, but nobody likes bad surprises. And that's important to make sure that you're on top of. As we plan for the future, it's very important to think about what difference you're making. How do you know if your digital efforts are actually making a difference? We talked about all of these factors in perseverance and this trade-off that you have to make. Either way, anything you do is progress, and that progress should be considered a win. So let's face those problems and those possibilities head on. Let's go straight to them. Let's be digital pioneers and think about the traditional investments we need to make, as well as the secondary and primary benefits of those and how other people can celebrate in the benefits that we're creating. Digital transformation, it changes the organization from making customer experiences better to making processes run more smoothly. How are you helping get this web untangled? Think about that and be clear of your role and sell your impact, because your impact is massively important in the age of possibility. So let's summarize this a bit. As digital pilots working to bring digital strategies and technologies into your business, we started on a journey that reminds us of the pioneering spirits of the past. From visionary thinking, strategic investment, and relentless perseverance through the stories of Frank Whittle, Hans von Ohain, who had ushered humanity into the jet age. These ideas aren't just interesting facts from the past. They're at the heart of today's successful digital change. Organizations can get through the complicated digital world by having a long-term vision, investing wisely in the tools that help them reach their goals, and sticking with it, having that perseverance. We then explored the steps you can take to encourage innovation, make smart investments, and be more resilient. We looked at the green tech example and how they paved the way for digital change by starting small and scaling as they went. All of this leads to one big conclusion. And really, it's the most important thing that I want to share in today's episode, the one thing that nets this all out. And it's this idea of how important it is for you as a digital pilot to lead change and it really comes down to being resilient. The idea of resiliency and adapting. This includes not only adjusting to weathering the storms, but also tackling and dynamically changing strategies as you go. Resiliency goes beyond this idea of just perseverance and having grit. As a digital pilot, you need to make sure your companies are having the culture and experiencing the learning from every attempt, and that your plans are flexible, and that the people that want to change are actually equipped to do. Being resilient and being adaptive helps you make sure that the efforts you put into your digital flight plan don't just go through the trip, but they thrive on it. People are not just along for the ride. They thrive on it. Each person using their chance to attain some level of success.
We will now be going through the podcast and serving your pioneering perspective. You may want to write this down.
Today's pioneering perspective is adaptive resilience. What a great call out. As digital pilots, bringing those digital strategies into your company, you're always looking for new ways to do things. Remember, you need to be exact, you need to be intentional, and you have to be ahead as a digital pilot. In the drive to change how airplanes flew, Frank Whittle and Hans von Ohain, the creators of the jet engine, showed unwavering perseverance and capacity. This meant not only sticking to things even when they were hard, but also adapting. When you think about adaptive resilience, it's about putting things into practice. There's huge benefits for everyone when you do that, and it helps you make smart steps towards being more resilient, having more agility, and more importantly, creating wins for others. When your organization can respond to technology and adapt ahead of the curve, everybody wins. So having that attitude of looking for the possibility, understanding the market conditions, and being resilient are critical. In the same way, that work is critical to you, and then that work of the jet engine didn't mean much until people used it. Let's push ourselves to find a balance between this idea of innovating and then also using and putting it into action. With resilience, Whittle and von Ohain, they broke the limits, but they didn't just sit on it. They pushed it out for others to use. Take a moment and think about the digital projects that you're working on right now. How much are you learning yourself versus how much is somebody else learning because of you? Are you helping other people be successful and actually see themselves in the innovation? Are you letting complexity hold you back, or perhaps a relationship, or perhaps a lack of understanding and maybe being a little bit tentative because you don't have all the answers? What you want to do is you want to lean into that. You're a digital pioneer. Lean into that. In fact, in your next project review or in your next group conversation, have people ask questions. Let people challenge. Find out ways in which they think about the balance between the investments that they're making and the payout of those investments. Have them talk through it. Have them talk about their ability to be resilient in the face of change. Get your coworkers involved and help them think about the process of innovating versus investing, or managing risk versus innovation, and have them give examples of where they're tackling this or struggling with this right now. By doing so, you pay tribute to the memory of those flight pioneers, the gentlemen who worked on the jet engine. And you learn from their lessons of vision and perseverance and strategic innovation right there in your team meeting. So their story should motivate you to create a plan for hearing from others, from listening for others, and really focusing on taking action to see how your ideas and how the team's ideas actually come to life. As we navigate the ever-changing skies of digital transformation, your insights and experiences are invaluable to us. That's why we regularly seek your feedback to ensure this journey is as relevant and as engaging as possible. So keep the feedback and the ideas coming. They're essential in shaping future episodes of Digital Flight. I want to ensure that each episode meets your needs and answers your most pressing digital transformation questions. It's time to take the first step towards cultivating an environment where experimentation is not just encouraged. Remember to be resilient. As we roll out today, I want to give you our throttle up. As a digital pilot, I like to give you a throttle up before you're done listening. And that throttle up is be precise, be accurate, and have attention to detail. As a digital pilot, you must be precise. You also need to be proactive. Digital pilots are anticipatory of the approach. They seek and address potential challenges. And then, of course, be pioneering. Embrace change and innovation. Stay brave, stay curious, stay pioneering. See you next time. Wheels up.
Thanks for joining us. To become a digital pilot and accelerate your journey, make sure you've subscribed to our show in your favorite podcast player. If you have an idea of what you want to hear in a future show or have a story to share, you can email us at digitalflightpodcast@gmail.com. You can also connect with us by going to digitalflight.pro or by sending Brian Lambert a LinkedIn connection request. Thank you for flying with us. We'll see you next time.